Hey everyone, welcome back to Secret Sonics. This is the first episode of Mix Notes. Mix Notes is going to be, I don't know, it's this new thing that I'm trying while I mentioned earlier that I'm going bi-monthly for now for the time being with the podcast in terms of interviews because of just the stage of life that I'm at. And I thought rather than having nothing in between, maybe I could do like a brief little life update, talk about things I'm thinking about, what I'm up to in audio, what's happening in my mixes, things I'm thinking, all that stuff, basically. So, Mix Notes, episode 1 within Secret Sonics. Uh, and this is actually, I tried recording it and I forgot to do a video, but I think I'm going to do a video. Let's see how that goes. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about upgrading systems. I just upgraded my system and it was a whole thing. It was a lot. And yeah, I think I posted about it a little bit on social media, so maybe some people saw this. But yeah, so I was running on an iMac, late 2015 iMac. I was still on Mojave, and it was pretty stable. But things were, the CPU. You could read the writing on the wall that this is getting towards the end of this computer. When you're loading up VSTs, if you're doing a production, with mixing, most of the time it was fine. But with heavy productions and stuff, like all of a sudden, like the VSTs are maxing everything out, upping the buffer speed. Now you can't play an instrument. I was exporting projects into new projects so that I could record vocals. It was a whole thing. And yeah, you could see that it's coming towards the end, I got 6 years out of it, which, I can't complain about. But better to buy a new computer before the old one, crashes and burns. Although I think, hopefully I'll sell this for a little bit of money, but I don't think it's gonna, totally crash and burn, but clearly wasn't as user-friendly as I needed it to be for the stuff I'm doing every single day because, I'm a professional. This is what I do. So, yeah, I bought a Mac Studio, which a bunch of people seem to be using and being happy with, including Travis Ferentz from Progressions. Yeah, and I got it with the M1. Got like the souped out of like the lower level one, like a souped out, like it got like 64 gigabytes of RAM, 1 gigabyte SSD, the whole thing. But not like I don't remember which is higher, the Max or the Ultra. So I think the Max is actually the Max. So I got the Ultra, I got the M1 Ultra, or maybe it's the other way around. I don't remember. And then they announced M2 like right after I purchased this, but they didn't actually announce M2 for the Mac Studio, only for the Mac Mini. And I think the Mac Studio is going to be a bit stronger for the processing, which is what I need. The strong processor is like almost the most important thing for the stuff that we're doing. Like I don't know, I have this MacBook Air, which is like super weak, and I take it when I have to travel or whatever, and I'm exporting, let's say, podcasts, and it takes like 5 times longer than my iMac does to to export a podcast. Yeah, that's not enough horsepower for the stuff that we're doing. So yeah, the Mac Studio, and then I had to buy a screen because I didn't have a screen because I was using an iMac and an HDMI cable and like the whole thing. So I basically the M1, the Mac Studio arrived. And I was like, I'm not going to like have this up for at least a week. I didn't open it. I didn't turn it on for almost a week. I think I finally turned it on like 5 or 6 days later. I like plugged it into my TV to see if I could start downloading things, set it up. It was very difficult. Yeah. So a friend of the podcast, former guest Sam Sherbin, told me, you should just download or have all of your installers on a folder and just like one by one, just put it on that computer and then just one by one, just go through it. But it's actually, I didn't have all of the installers because I've had some of these plugins for so many years. They're all over the place. I had to search through my email, for some random plugins, stuff that I didn't even necessarily buy, like things like that, maybe guests gave me, like Ken Lewis gave me his Greenhouse, Sampura, the purified audio, like the VU compressor, all these things that are amazing, but I didn't actually buy licenses for, but I was gifted them, like finding them in random emails. Yeah, and also like installers changed, and I had to buy some new installers. Actually I did with Waves. I had to WUP. I finally WUP'd. I was on like V9 with my Waves plugins. I was like, there's just some Waves plugins I can't live without. I've mentioned this on the air, but like the Manny American, reverb and stuff. So I ended up spending the $240 to WUP all my Waves plugins. But other than that, making sure everything was up to date, installing it, and someone asked me how long did it actually take you, and I think it took me to do the bulk of the work was about 6 hours, but then after that there was at least 2 to 4 hours of extra work, including like the random email installers and I had to like update my Army, my interface, which is a little bit old. I had to do that in like safe reboot mode on my Mac, and then and then install a new driver, like a new driver, new new flash. I don't know, the whole thing. So basically, you think it was just a total can of worms, and it took me, I told you it took over a week, or it took about a week till I turned it on, and then it took another 3 to 5 days to get it kind of up and running and saying, okay, now I'm working on this machine, and I'm still running into some issues because it came installed with Ventura, which is like the newest OS, but it's not all the plugins are fully, they're not fully working with Ventura, so I'm getting some buggy issues. Dan Silberman told me I could have installed, one earlier. I think that would have been Monterey. But I was like, I'm already here. Like, all these plugins eventually are going to catch up. So I have to just kind of this is it. 98% of things are working. Let's just hang tight. I've already installed it. I spent all the hours installing it. And when you're busy, it's not like I could spend a whole day just upgrading everything. I'm kind of doing it in between all these projects and work and life and parenthood and all these things. So it was like a whole to do. And also I had to make sure all my native instruments, my sample packs are I have all these samples on external SSD and setting up the native access. So it's all working on the computer. All these things take so long. It was a whole process, but I don't think I could have done it much faster. Maybe if I had maybe now that I have all these installers on a folder, on my desktop, which I'll move to, a hard drive at some point, maybe it'll be easier. But, these plugins update, so I don't know if it might make a difference. But, there's just so many moving parts. I think when I finally turned on Logic and it was scanning all the AU plugins, it took audio unit plugins, it took I don't know. It didn't take very long, but it's it's now scanning 385, plugins. I was like, geez. And that wasn't even all of it. Anyway, so it was a whole thing, updating your system. But you know what? Had to do it, right? We have to stick with the times. Now, hopefully this system will last me for, the previous computer lasted me 6 years, and hopefully this will last me for the next 6 years. And anyways, I thought I'd let you guys know some of the things that, I went through, how long it took, and hopefully that's interesting and valuable for you guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Mixed Notes. If you have any questions, hit me up on Instagram or whatever. I'm here. And I was trying to think if there's any last things I wanted to mention about this new Mac Studio, but yeah, I don't know. Now I'm more future-proofed, I guess, for the next little while. I could check out, some of the binaural, versions of immersive audio and that kind of stuff. And yeah, I don't know what I'm gonna do about that. Probably nothing for now, but that's kind of it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Mixed Notes and Secret Sonics, and I'll be back next week with an interview. So stay tuned. Have a good one, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Secret Sonics. If you've been digging the show, it would be awesome if you could share this episode or your favorite episode with a friend or two, and or leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher of choice. That's it for now. Have a great week. Take care and dig in. See you soon. Bye-bye.